Here in the Media Center, we're going to continue rolling on with our media availabilities for the Food City 500 with Josh Berry, driver of the number 4 Mustang Dark Horse for Stewart Haas Racing. If you have a question for Josh, raise your hand. We'll get a wireless microphone to you. We'll start here with John.
John Newby, NBC Sports. So earlier, Kamui Kobayashi was in here, and he talked about how he thinks there's a potential audience for a race in Japan. I was curious from your perspective, with NASCAR mixing up the schedule, going a bunch of different places. I mean, where would you like to go? What would you like to see added?
Japan seems like a long ways away. I don't know. Montreal always, that seems, I remember growing up watching racing there. It seemed like, obviously a good racetrack that put on a good show. But I feel like North America, to me, is kind of the extent of it, I think, whether we're going north or south.
It's Chris.
Hey, Josh. Chris Weaver, Fox 8, WGHP High Point. How important is it for NASCAR to have a superstar? You're obviously filling big shoes coming in after Kevin Harvick, who was really widely known, but somebody like Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon were like names around the world. How important do you think that is, and how do you get there if you're trying to do it, or how does NASCAR get to having a superstar?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously, I think it's important for the sport to have those guys that are household names. To me, the way somebody does that is by winning a lot of races and championships, right? I mean, that's how those guys beforehand did it, is by winning a lot. And, the difference, I think, more than ever now is it's just so competitive. It's hard to stand out compared to everybody you're racing with, right? Even the guys that are winning races aren't winning as much as they were years back. So it's just more competitive than ever, which is it's a good thing at the same time too, from when you're sitting there watching it.
Go next to Matt.
Matt Weaver, Sportsnot. This has not been the start to the season that I imagine anyone at the 4-team wanted. How do you guys try to not get too suckered into the moment, and what are the overall vibes like so far?
Well, I mean, you're right. It's been a little bit disappointing. Even when I started this, going back to last summer, right? Like, people ask me all the time what my expectations were, and I always said I expected it to be hard, and it is hard. Cup racing's hard. So, that side of it, right? I think each race we've had different things happen that maybe that hurt our finish or not. But I feel like when we get everything put together, and the car's handling like I want, and we execute, we have speed, we make progress, we're faster. So, for me, I need to, made a couple mistakes over the last few weeks, right? Spinning out and qualifying at Phoenix put us really far behind. All these guys all week, all they talk about is how you can't pass. I mean, having a mistake like that puts you really far behind and makes your day look worse than it is, right? So for me, it's just hopefully get some of these mistakes out of the way early on and start, qualifying a little better, and I think we'll be fine.
And a question about Bubba Pollard making his debut at Richmond. That's obviously a guy you've been around a lot, you've raced against, been a teammate for. What does it mean as a short track guy to seeing Bubba have an opportunity to tell his story and showcase his skills?
I think it's really cool. And I think he's going to a great place. I think the Xfinity car at Richmond is probably one of the, when I think back to, actually, if we go back probably 7 or 8 years, I did that. I had a race there, I think in 2015. It was probably my second or third start. And I was racing Cup guys that night and raced up into the top 5 and had a really good race. And I remember coming in the media center afterwards and nobody knew who I was. Everybody was like, who's this guy, right? So I think the opportunity's there for Bubba, right? I watched Dale's video. And he said if we give him a good car, he'll race it to the front. And honestly, I believe that. I think it's a great, that platform at Richmond, I think, is a lot like the short track racing that he does and that I did for years. So I'm excited to watch how he does for sure.
Go next to Davey, then to Kelly.
Davey Siegel with Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. You said you weren't surprised that this is hard, but you've obviously done this before on a limited basis in a substitute role, fill in kind of week to week. Now that you're full-time in the Cup Series doing this and you have kind of a stable future ahead of you for this season, what have you found most difficult, or what has surprised you the most about doing this every single week?
Nothing in particular, right? I think throughout my opportunities last year, I realized how competitive it was and how hard it was. I think just building the relationship with your team, working on the communication of practice to qualifying to the race, and learning that, and that's where I feel like I need to grow a little bit, right? Like last year, it was kind of, you're on borrowed time each race, right? We didn't know which race they were coming back or not, and we kind of just raced, right? We didn't really think about any of that stuff. And then now, whenever you're trying to build, you build piece by piece into something bigger, right? Like this is an important time for all of us right now to learn each other and just do a little better job of that, right? And I think that'll come with time.
Next to Kelly.
Kelly Crandall, Racer.com. Josh, you mentioned the mistakes. Would that be the biggest thing then? Because I was going to ask how you feel like you've been doing behind the wheel. Is the mistakes going to be what comes to mind then?
Yeah, I think so. Each race has been different, right? Daytona, we lost a lap getting spun out on pit road. I don't really know what I would have done different in that scenario. The duels, the car, we had an issue with the fuel pump. Each race has been a little different, right? I had back-to-back speeding penalties at Atlanta, which was, just silly, but just an honest mistake, right? Of just understanding the car and everything there. So I think that you just have to. You can't have those mistakes, right? Like you gotta execute each practice session, qualifying session, and to me, I think that's where I've missed it a little bit. I got to clean that stuff up, and I think if we can get our car a little bit better here in different spots of the race, I feel like we can run in the top 15, top 10 pretty easy.
That was going to be my next question. How far off do you feel like the car is? I know we've had so many different races now. Last week was even a completely different package. But overall, do you feel like the car is close enough and it's just a matter of trying to hone in on the little details? Yeah, I feel like when our car is balanced and driving pretty good, it's fast, which is, the speed is there. So to me, it's just about learning how to communicate those different pieces to Rodney, right? It's, just when I go out to practice at Phoenix and I feel like I'm tight, I don't know how tight I really am. I don't know what adjustments we need to make exactly, and just learning that and understanding that stuff so I can give him better information is going to be important, right? And that starts with practice and qualifying and to start of the race. So I feel like, the last 2 weeks obviously are a little bit more gauge of where you're at. We had one bad run in each race that we fell back and lost a lap. Really, if we didn't have those two runs, I think our finishes look a lot better.
Next to Lee.
Lee Spencer, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio and CatchFence.com. Curious, would you think that the most challenging thing for you to get used to since making the transition to Xfinity and now Cup has been the road courses, and what are your thoughts entering COTA?
Yeah, for sure. I think, even when I went to the Xfinity Series, I hadn't raced on road courses at all. So next week's going to be tough, right? I definitely know that, especially with all the, the extra guys that are really talented coming in, right? I think that's just going to make the field that much more deep. So, but all in all, I don't really, going into next week, I don't really have expectations, right? I think it's everything that I said, right? Just however we start to learn, to get faster, to get better, get more competitive, not make big mistakes, keep the car on the racetrack, and dodge the chaos that is a lot of times if we have the late race restarts. I think if we can do all that, we can get a solid finish.
Have you spent more time in the sim trying to work on your racecraft for places where you have to turn left and right?
Yeah, over the last couple of years, that's definitely been a big effort of mine. Is just, and I felt like the biggest thing that I was against learning a lot of times in the Xfinity car was just learning the racetracks, right? I felt like when I went back to a place for the second time, I was considerably faster. I would qualify better. I'd practice better. And like I said, all those things we've talked about, right? Like that helps you so much. If you can just start practice faster, you qualify better, then you have better track position to start the race and you race better. So next week will be another, chance to do that, right? Obviously adapting to the new car. I've watched the races. I can kind of see how it's, it's probably more of a purpose-built kind of road course car. I don't know if that will make me feel more comfortable or less comfortable until I get out there and experience it. But Yeah, no, I'm excited for that. Right after that, we're going to part of the tire test at Sonoma. That's going to be the first time I've ever tested with data on the car and stuff. So that'll be fun for me to take what I learned at COTA, then go be a part of that test and continue to learn.
What's the data that?
Just just all the data, right? Throttle, steering, braking, just a little bit more detailed than what normal you would have.
Thank you.
Do we have any additional questions for Josh? We'll go back to John.
John Newby, NBC Sports. When you talk about all this different learning curves that you're going through, what effect does it have, going with like the super speedway package, then you have the new short track package, then you have different packages this week, then you have all these different packages that you're adjusting to on a weekly basis?
I don't put much thought into it. I just don't have the just the knowledge and understanding and experience yet of this car to really know how it's going to affect it, right? Like I just go and just try to learn as quick as I can and take in all the information that I can to be prepared. But really, it just comes down to going out and doing it and feeling it for yourself. That's the most important part. And it was funny. I thought even last week, I thought it was a step in the right direction, and then a lot of people said it was the opposite, and there was a lot of mixed reviews on that. But I thought it was a step in the right direction. I mean, sure, there's a ways to go, but I thought it was an improvement in just how the car felt compared to what I remembered the year before. But I don't know. We'll let all these other guys talk about it, I guess.
Well, Josh, good luck today in qualifying, and good luck the rest of the weekend.
Cool. Thank y'all.
Take care now.